Keenan Park stakeholder group met?
Thank you for your second question, Mr Denham. This time I'd ask the Director of Infrastructure Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President. Good evening, Mr Denham. Thank you for the question. The steering group has met approximately 30 times and the stakeholder reference group has met 12 times in the last 3 years.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. And Mr Denham, would you like to ask your third question?
Third one is, so how many hours in total did the Keenan Park steering group contribute to the total of the 5,560 hours of Shire officers' time previously stated?
Thank you for your third question, Mr Denham. Again, I'd ask the Director of Infrastructure Services to please provide a response.
Thank you for your second question, Mr Denham. With the exception of the project manager, the steering group's hours are not included in the 5,560 hours of Shire officers' time.
Right. Thank you.
Director. Thank you, Mr Denham. I'd now like to ask Mrs Michelle Rich to come forward and ask her questions, please.
Good evening, councillors and officers. My first question this evening is, could the Director of Corporate Services please provide any details of any current or historical unpaid rate amount that I owe the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale?
Thank you, Mrs Rich, for your first question. I would ask the Director of Corporate Services to please provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President. Good evening, Mrs Rich. In accordance with 5.94 and 5.95 of the Local Government Act 1995, this is classified as confidential information and cannot be released in a public forum.
Thank you, Director. Mrs Rich, would you like to ask your second question?
Thank you, Director. My second question is the Local Government Act 1995, Section 5.232 states, if a meeting is being held by a council or by a committee referred to in subsection 1B, the council or committee may close to members of the public the meeting or part of the meeting if the meeting or the part of the meeting deals with any of the following: A, a matter affecting an employee or employees, and B, the personal affairs of any person. What avenues do mayors, presidents or councillors legally have to release information related to the personal affairs of any person in any way if the information is not able to be dealt with in a publicly open meeting or committee meeting of council?
Thank you for your second question, Mrs Rich. Again, I would ask the Director of Corporate Services to provide a response.
Thank you, Mr President. Certainly, to my knowledge, none.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. Thank you, Director. Members of the public, that has been 6 minutes of public question time. Is there anyone in the gallery who'd like to come forward and ask a question? Thank you, Mrs Bond. And then, is that Mrs Reynolds? You can come up second, please, after Mrs Bond. Thank you.
Why is the ratepayer purchasing drug testing kits? What are these being used for? Money is being spent on these kits. Why haven't you completed the footpath from Graceford? Is this not important?
Thank you for your questions, Mrs Bond. My understanding is there was 2 questions there. Both those questions will be taken on notice. Did you have a third question?
No, that's one question, because I want to know why the money's used on drug testing kits when you should be putting a footpath in. Don't waste $700 every time you want to buy drug testing kits.
Thank you for your question, Mrs Bond. Do you have another question you'd like to ask?
Why are the ratepayers paying for prizes to get residents to complete surveys? Children being given $50 for their opinions. Who made this decision and how can you justify this?
Thank you for your question, Mrs Bond. Again, Director, would you like to provide a response? Or we take it on notice? Yeah. Thank you, Director of Community Engagement. Thank you.
When Shire officers are developing communication and engagement plans, we consider all options available to increase the number of people who will respond. And for the youth engagement survey that is currently offering an incentive of $50 voucher for young people to participate, that was identified as a cost-effective way to encourage young people to be involved in Shire activities.
Thank you, Director, for providing an answer. Mrs Bond, do you have a third and final question to ask?
Why haven't the lights on the corner of Abernethy and Hopkinson Road been erected? What does it mean you have decreased money for this? Where is the original $50,000 budgeted for this?
Thank you for the question, Mrs Bond. Director, do you want to take that on notice? I'm looking at the Director of Infrastructure Services. We'd like to take that on notice and provide an answer in due course. Thank you, Director. We'll take that on notice, Mrs Bond. Oh, thank you, Director, if you'd like to provide a response. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. That project is with Western Power for design and installation.
Do you know how much has been spent on design so far?
I couldn't tell you offhand how much we've spent so far, but...
Could I get that in the answer, please?
We'll take the question on notice. I'll give you back a
Or
response with that
just tell me
information.
how much of the 50,000 is left. That would be easier.
Mrs Bond, the Director's
give you that.
provided a response. If you need any further information, they'll be provided.
Can you do that?
As we do with other questions without notice, they'll be provided as an answer to you in due course. I think the Director has provided a suitable answer at this point.
Okay.
Thank you, Mrs Bond. Mrs Reynolds, would you like to come forward and ask a question? And then the gentleman in the front row, I think you... Yep.
Thank you. Vanessa Reynolds, Oakford. I'd like to thank you first for the response to my questions at the last OCM. They've actually left me with a lot more questions. So I've got two questions, if I may, please. My first one is, if I have questions between council meetings, am I able to ask them directly to the Shire? And if so, how do I go about that? Is there a proper process, rather than having to wait a month in between?
The answer is yes. I'm looking at the CEO to provide a more substantive answer than simply yes, but certainly this is a Shire that is more than happy to answer questions from anyone. So, Mr CEO, looking at the CRM model that we have, would you like to provide any further information to Mrs Reynolds about the best way for her to do that?
Thanks, Mr. President. Yes, Ms Reynolds, of course, you can email the Shire at any time. There's a customer request form on the website, or you can email info@shire, or you can contact myself or any of the directors directly, and we can certainly happy to answer any questions you have.
Great, thank you. And then my next question is, in response to the questions from the last OCM, I'm confused in the response. It does say here that a cost breakdown of the waste administration and waste transfer station budgets. Does that mean this is the budget that was allowed for these items, or is this the actual expenditure as to cost, which is what I requested?
Thank you for the question, Mrs Reynolds. I'm looking at the Director of Infrastructure Services. Are you able to provide some further guidance to that? I know that it wasn't you that provided the answer. Director?
Thank you, Mr. President. If we can take the question on notice.
Thank you, Director. Mrs Reynolds, did you have...
Mr. President, if Mrs Reynolds wants to come and meet, we're happy to catch up and provide those in more detail if you like, or answer those questions if you wanted to come in and meet with staff and answer some of those questions at some point in time. But we're equally happy to provide you a written response as well.
Okay, that would be wonderful, please, because I've only done 9 months' worth of calculations here. I've got a couple of spreadsheets running from the creditors' lists that are provided each month, and the costs that I'm getting from the creditors' list certainly do not equate to these costs that have been
Thank you, Mrs Reynolds.
provided.
Did you have another question, or were you happy just to email?
No, that'll be fine. Thank you.
The gentleman in the front row, would you like to come forward and ask your question, please? And just if you could just say who you are and your suburb of residence, please.
Yeah, hi. My name's Rick Gill. I'm from the Recreational Trail Bike Riders Association. I've just been asked to come down to talk a little bit about the question you're about to consider a little later in providing a letter of support to our association, and probably more information or support than questions. Well, prior to that, on the 20th of May 2024, the Shire met to make a decision about supporting an off-road vehicle area at Blue Rocks, and it required some support from the Department of Local Government.
Sorry, sir, I'll stop you there. There is an opportunity for you to make a statement. So this is question time. If you've got a particular question you'd like to ask council or staff, this is the time to do so.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you'd like to make a public statement, you can do so without notice, but that's the next item in the agenda. So it's up to you.
All right, so
If you've got a particular question, now's the time to do it. If you'd like to make a statement, and then you can do that later in the
Okay,
meeting.
I'll make a statement later. So has the Department of Local Government actually presented to the Shire regards off-road vehicle areas?
Thank you for the question. Director of Community Engagement, would you like to provide an answer, please?
The Shire has written to the State Government's Off-Road Vehicle Advisory Committee, inviting them to present to elected members at a policy concept forum. The Shire and the State Government Committee have been liaising on a suitable date for them to present, but unfortunately, due to their availability, that has not been able to occur this year, and it's likely to occur in 2025.
Okay, keep out of them. I'm a member of that committee, and you'll need to push them.
Thank you, Director. Would you like to ask another question?
Yes, I would.
If you would like to ask another question, we are now at nearly 15 minutes for public question time. So do you have another question to ask?
Yes, so
Is there any other members of the public who'd like to make another? So can I have a council please move a motion to extend public statement time for 15 minutes? Councillor Bice, you have with that? Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Mack. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. So public statement time, public question time, we'll get there eventually. Public question time will be extended until 7:32 p.m. Please ask your second question, sir.
Okay, so the Peel Trails planning made an assessment that trail bikes were the second largest user group in the surveys they've done, and the Shire has got aspirations to become a trail town. So I was just wondering why registered trail bikes weren't considered in the Serpentine Jarrahdale Trails planning.
Thank you for your second question, sir. Again, I might defer to the Director of Community Engagement to provide a response if you're happy to do so, Director.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for the question. The Shire is guided by the Jarrahdale Trail Town business case, which does not reference road registered trail bike activities, including within the Jarrahdale Trails priority area. These documents have been instrumental in helping the Shire prioritise projects and guide investments in trail development. In addition to this, it is important to note that most of the land used for trails around Jarrahdale is managed by the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions, and following the 8 steps trail development process, any trail proposal must have the support of the relevant land manager or owner, and again, as I mentioned, that is DBCA.
Thank you, Director.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And if you'd like to make a statement later on in the meeting, please do so. I saw some other hands up the back. Was there anyone, Mr. Atwell, would you like to come forward and ask a question?
Yep, David Atwell, Muddy John. In my travels, I noticed I think it was today or yesterday, that the hard stand area at Permacast is up for lease. Now, my question is, and I don't expect an answer here, do we have any control over what may be put in that particular area, owing to the fact that it's been quite a journey, that one?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Atwell. I see the Director of Development Services looking at me. Are you happy to give some advice on that, Director, please?
Certainly, and thank you for the question through you, Mr. President. So there is a planning approval on foot for hard stand and storage at that location, which has conditions associated with it. So any operator who comes along who is seeking to undertake hard stand and storage in accordance with those conditions would be able to do so. So the approval's not specific to storing just product that Metronet has ordered from Permacast. The planning approval is referencing hard stand and storage activities. Of course, if someone wants to come and do something entirely different, they'll need to seek a development approval from the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale, which we'll assess in accordance with the planning framework.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Mr Atwell, do you have another question?
Yeah, one very quick one. Well, not very quick one, I don't suppose. I've been mulling over the what's the name, the tip, so to speak, or the whatever. Do we have a detailed, obviously we've got some sort of a pro forma that tells us what works are going to be done there. I wonder do we have a detailed design of the scope of works that will be done? Because $8 million, I believe, is been bandied as to the figure. And I'm wondering what amount of, e.g. sand, whatever, needs to be provided and what exactly does need to be provided to make that safe. I mean, I'm not sure if it's just sand, whether it has to be capped with something else, and what quantities of product have to be used to actually solve this problem. Because to my way of thinking, to whack $8 million worth of sand in there you can probably build Mount Everest. So.
Thank you for the question, Mr Atwell. I'll ask Director of Infrastructure Services, are you able to provide an answer to that, bearing in mind that the report will be coming back to Council in February next year? Thanks, Director.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Shire has developed two concept plans for the site. One is a larger footprint, one is a smaller footprint. So the cost is based on rehabilitating the site, free from contaminants, removing the stockpile of drainage waste and construction and demolition waste that's on site. And there's ballpark, very high-level costings for each of the two options. So in terms of what material will be used and how the site will be upgraded to as a future waste transfer station, those details will come from the detailed design, which would be the next step in the works, should Council decide to go further with the waste transfer station. So the detailed design hasn't been done yet. In terms of the quantities, we don't know exactly how much the quantities or the cost would be. The $8 million is the higher or the worst case scenario for the option 2, which is the bigger footprint of the entire site. Based on the previous activities to process green waste, take all the hard waste that we were doing before to a lower scale. So the final details will come through the detailed design process after the February Council meeting, should Council decide to progress further.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Director. Do you have a third question, Mr Atwell?
No,
Thank you. I know Mrs Rich down the back. Is there anyone else that would like to ask a question? No, Mrs Rich, please come forward and ask your questions, please.
Last week, I attended a community meeting held in Hopeland in regards to the Watercorp culverts, and there was quite a lot of discussion. I'd like to thank both Councillor Morgan Bias and the Director of Infrastructure Services for attending that meeting and speaking with the members of the community that have concerns. There have been a number of community members that have actually spoken to various government departments, and the information provided has actually left the community out there quite confused as to actually why the limit of the bridge has been dropped to 15 tonne. There has been talk of the bridge deck deteriorating, then there was talk of the culverts under the ground deteriorating, and then there has been information provided to community members that the reason for the drop in tonnage is because of the upgrade and widening of the road, and that the bridge isn't been widened at the same time. So basically that there's nothing wrong with the bridge, it's just the fact that the road has been upgraded and widened. Can the Shire please communicate with the various government departments that are involved in this and provide some information to the community of exactly why the bridge has had its load weight reduced, to whether it is the deck that has deteriorated, whether it is actually the culverts under the ground that have deteriorated, or whether it is because the road has been upgraded and that there is concerns over the shoulders of the road where the road meets the bridge. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Mrs Rich. It is a
I'm quite happy to take it on notice.
It is a topical question that you have asked, and the Shire CEO and I have been discussing that. What I would say is, unfortunately, councils had another event last Wednesday, so that precluded the majority of councils attending. So I do apologise if there was a low participation in councils, but that's why. And thank you for your patience, we will take that on notice. Are there any other members of the public gallery who would like to come forward and ask a question? That being the case, I declare public question time finished at 7:25 p.m. That brings on to agenda item number 3. Agenda item number 3 is public statement time. Public statement time will now commence at 7:25 p.m. and I'll ask Rael Tem from Jarrahdale Rail Bikes, Jarrahdale, to come forward and make his statement. Thank you.
All right, good evening and thank you for the opportunity to speak to Council tonight. My name is Rael Temmie, President of Jarrahdale Community Collective, and I'm here in my role as Deputy Chair of Jarrahdale Rail Bikes Steering Committee, which is a subcommittee of the JCC, here to provide some detail to Council to support our request for in-principle support from the SJ Shire for our project. Jarrahdale Rail Bikes Steering Committee is focused on repurposing a section of abandoned railway close to the Jarrahdale Township to allow guided return tours on pedal-powered bikes along a section of rail track from Buckland Road to the west of Jubb Road. A feasibility study is already underway with results due out by the end of the year. The benefits of this project to Jarrahdale and the wider community of SJ are many and varied, but collectively will achieve a common goal. Jarrahdale Rail Bikes will be the only activity of its type on mainland Australia. A similar concept has already been undertaken in Tasmania. It will raise the profile of Serpentine Jarrahdale, have a positive impact on tourism in the area and increase demand for local businesses. It will have a volunteer focus, fostering community engagement, thus ensuring travellers have a unique and personable experience with their guides, but not only promotes the activity in the region, but provides a history lesson as well. It will operate as a not-for-profit entity with some revenues set aside for donations to community groups, thus increasing local funding options and thereby reducing the financial burden on ratepayers. We are seeking in-principle support from the Shire to further our discussions with principal stakeholders and government departments and promote the project as it moves through its various stages from an idea to a reality. Please note this is not a request for funding. There is no expectation of an approach to the Shire for funding, as we are confident funding can be secured elsewhere should the feasibility study produce a positive result. I thank you for the time and consideration, and we look forward to bringing this project to the community. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Can I just please remind members of the gallery, please, if you want to talk, to excuse yourselves. We are live streaming and the microphones may pick up background noise. The next person I'd like to ask to come forward is Mrs Colleen Rankin, who's going to make a statement on behalf of the Byford Districts Country Club. Thank you, Mrs Rankin.
Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to address you at tonight's meeting. You have all obviously read the reason why we have requested assistance from the Shire to help finance the replacement of the substandard basin green that was originally installed. That was found at attachment 1. As a not-for-profit club and a Shire-owned asset, we support local community groups, many of them financially, and we are a social hub for more than 8,000 members, plus their families and friends. with the cost of the green blowing out by $132,000, unknown to us until the reconstruction was underway, we hope that negotiations between the BDCC and the SJ Shire Council can reach agreement to support us in our support of all the local community groups. As Chair of the Board of the BDCC, I would like to suggest a simplified version of option 1, which will just leave open any suggestions from councillors and staff and board members for us to discuss into the future. That council notes the letter from the Byford and District Country Club requesting financial support towards their bowling green replacement project provided at attachment 1. Requests the Chief Executive Officer continue to engage with the Byford and Districts Country Club to find a mutually acceptable solution for assistance to be provided by the Shire to the Byford and District Country Club for the replacement of the green. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Rankin, for your statement. I'd now like to ask Mrs Karen McEwen to come forward, and I believe that Mrs McEwen is going to make a statement on behalf of Sue Simons, and we have written confirmation of that arrangement. So thank you, Mrs McEwen. Please come forward and make your statement.
Karen McEwen, Carter, and I'm talking on behalf of Sue and Trevor Simmons. I'm reading their statement. We have lived in the older section of Carborough Drive for 30 years now, at number 42, lot 67. We are very concerned at the effects the groundwater could be and has had on the health of people in this area, and also the fact that wherever a tap leaks from the bore water, nothing grows. It's like the bore has Roundup in it. Our pool is filled from the bore, so we swim in it. We had our bore tested quite some years ago when it was common knowledge that the super tip liner was leaching water into the ground. Of course, the test came back as within guidelines, as it was tested by their people. In hindsight, we should have had it tested ourselves. I have lost numerous animals which all drank the bore water, healthy appearing animals that just die for no known reason. We now would like to provide a list of people we know in the last 30 years that have either passed away or developed cancer and lived in this area. One being my husband now, not to mention people we don't know about. Old end of Carborough Drive up to where new subdivision went in. 26 Carborough Drive, 2 separate owners. First one, wife, cancer. Second owner, husband, cancer. 28 Carborough Drive, wife cancer, deceased. 42 Carborough Drive, my husband, cancer last 2 months. 74 Carborough Drive, wife cancer, deceased. 83 Carborough Drive, wife cancer, deceased. Husband or partner, cancer, deceased. 97 Carborough Drive, wife cancer, deceased. Little Place. 10 Little Place, wife cancer, deceased. 35 Little Place, wife cancer, deceased. 56 Little Place, wife cancer, deceased. Pollard Cross. 7 Pollard Cross, wife cancer. Daughter, cancer, deceased. These are just the ones we know about, 13 in the past 30 years, of which Permapol has been using arsenic and chromium and whatever leached out of the super pit, and now, of course, Permacast. We feel this must be stopped and groundwater tested by an independent company that has nothing to do with these businesses. In fact, this must be stopped, full stop. How many more people have to die before something is done? I had planned on many more years ahead with my husband, but now we just don't know. Sue attached a map that we forwarded on to the councillors, all straight down for Permapol and Permacast. If this statement disturbs you in any way, please support Councillor Bias's motion. Thank you.
Mrs McEwen, while you're there, I know that we've got your husband making a statement and you again. Would you like to stay where you are and make your second statement, which is obviously on your behalf as opposed to Ms Simons?
Yes, this is on my behalf.
I'm more than happy for you to stay there and do your statement now.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President, councillors and Shire officials. Councillor Bias, thank you for submitting this notice of motion. I request that the rest of the councillors do the right thing and support this motion. Last month, I spoke to you about Permapol's licence and how the process to remove toxins from wastewater cannot possibly work. Dover has recently issued Permapol with a new licence, which is as bad as the old one and contributes to an even greater lack of faith in Dover. Permapol uses a chemical, CCA, which contains copper, chromium and arsenic to treat timber. The timber is treated under pressure with a CCA solution. Arsenic is a pesticide, copper is a fungicide, and chromium acts as a fixing agent that creates chemical complexes that bind the chemicals to the wood's cellulose and lignin. So basically, this is a chemical process. The new license states that no wastewater is disposed of and all wastewater is recycled. This is impossible. No plant can run on a continual closed loop. There has to be a bleed or a purge in any system to prevent buildup of chemicals, waste products, and water. Basically, you cannot keep adding to a system without ever taking anything out. The system cannot work, chemically or physically. This document is rubbish and once again shows no control or understanding of what is going on at these premises. Furthermore, there is no mention in the licence on how the wastewater level in the dam is controlled. What do they do when the wastewater dam level approaches its freeboard level? Remembering that this is a closed loop. What happens during the rainy season? Once again, Dover has granted Permapol a licence for a system which is uncontrollable. Dover has removed any requirement for Permapol to do any monitoring. This is just irresponsible. Permapol is using highly toxic chemicals with no regulations in place for controls or monitoring. Dover did not put any regulation in place for the control of or management of stormwater. The licence simply states potentially contaminated stormwater can be managed under general provisions of the EP Act and associated regulations. Self-regulation is no regulation. Additionally, the Shire's comments on the stormwater and wastewater management system in Table 1 of the licence decision document were not taken seriously by Dover. The treated timber storage area is gravel hardstand. It is not concreted or contained area. Runoff is directed towards the wastewater pond. Again, not via any controlled or contained system. And there is opportunity for the contaminants to enter the groundwater or flow from the premises. Section 4.2 of the licence decision document, Annual Environmental Reports, has 4 points. The first, there were no failures or malfunctions of any pollution control equipment. That is because there are no pollution control equipment. Item 2, no controlled waste was removed. That is because it would be too expensive for Permapol to do so. Item 3, there was no discharge of potentially contaminated water and therefore no monitoring was required. I refer to you to the police report. The police report number is presented. The police were called by one of our neighbours in the early hours of 28th of July 2023. Permapol had been running a noisy pump, pumping out the wastewater dam for about 12 hours. The police requested a Permapol employee that resides just outside the premises to turn off the pump. The fact that there are no records of monitoring should ring alarm bells and is of grave concern. Point number 4 was no complaints were received. I refer you to the police report mentioned in the dot point above. In addition, we expressed our concerns to DERWA about Permaport pumping out of the dam on several occasions and provided photographs of water leaving the Permaport site. In summary, this new license has granted Permaport a free hand to dispose of contaminated water as there have been over the past decades. There are no controls or monitoring in place. The license process is impossible. We do not believe DERWA will take this motion any more seriously than it took the Shire's comments on the new license. It has not done the right thing to date, and we believe it will continue to protect the company rather than the residents. If anything we say tonight raises the slightest concern, observe your duty of care and do the right thing and vote in favour of this motion. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr McEwen. I'd now like to ask Mr John McEwen to come forward and make his statement.
John McEwen, Cardup. Good evening, Mr President, councillors and Shire officials. Councillor Bias, thank you for submitting this notice on motion. I request the rest of the councillors to do the right thing and support this motion. Our community has been abandoned. Over the past several decades, we have been disregarded and kept uninformed in favour of the industries that can potentially cause us great harm and irrevocable damage by those that should be enforcing the regulations that protect us. We understand how difficult it is to take a stand in this situation. I myself have been falsely accused and denigrated in efforts to undermine my integrity because I presented the analysis of water samples I took. Reading this motion gave me that bit of strength. So again, thank you, Mr. Bias. Over the past 12 months or so, we have brought your attention to the numerous breaches at Lot 60 Robertson Road. We have made the same concerns known to DERWA. Unfortunately, any actions taken by DERWA have been in favour of the companies rather than the community. DERWA's removal of Permacast's prescribed status enabled the MODAP to approve the facility and remove most of the conditions of approval stipulated by the Shire, thereby removing even a modicum of protection for the community. Despite placing a noise monitor at my residence for around 6 months, the DWER chose to accept Permacast monitoring and calculations using the Bush Forever and a small community hall that is open around 3 hours a week. The DWR stated that the noise was compliant based on one reading, and if it was not tonal. Since that statement from DERWA, the noise has been accepted as compliant by everyone. DERWA has never provided any further findings or comments on the noise monitoring. When we queried the use of fly ash at Lot 60 Robertson Road, DERWA stated that WA Premix was compliant with its licensing obligations. This is despite the fact that the contract for the use of fly ash is with Permacast, not WA Premix, and the fly ash is not mentioned in either WA Premix's license or the regulations that pertain to it. DERWA do not seem inclined to look into it any further. Fly Ash Australia is a company that distributes fly ash, the very same collie fly ash that is being brought onto Permacast's site. Fly Ash Australia does not make cement or cement products, yet its facilities are prescribed due to the very nature of fly ash that we are concerned about. Its license is specific in dealing with the dangers of dealing with fly ash, yet Permacast who have already used cauliflower ash via its alliance with Suvo, is not a prescribed premise. Permapol is a prescribed premise, which is approximately 18 hectares in size. The laydown area consists of 36 hectares of mostly compacted tarmac land. Permacast consists of approximately 13 hectares of partially prescribed and partially non-prescribed land. During winter, this whole area creates an uncontrollable volume of stormwater which flows through prescribed and non-prescribed areas. The only stormwater plan for this area seems to be for Permacast, which vastly underestimates the size of the dam required. Hence, during winter, water floods uncontrolled out of Lot 60. We recently emailed the Shire regarding changes to the flora we have noticed over the past couple of years near Lot 60 Robertson Road. We received a reply from the Shire on the 15th of November stating that the vegetation was subject to a change in hydrological regime and that the Shire would be conducting roadside drainage maintenance. We would like to thank the Shire for undertaking this investigation. However, this added cost to the Shire is due to the uncontrolled flooding from Lot 60 and should be fixed at the source by the companies creating this exact problem. No water should be allowed to leave Lot 60, as per the regulations relating to prescribed premises. Considering that the area are partially prescribed and no one, including the Shire, seems to be able to confirm what is actually being brought onto the site, how it is treated, and how or where it is stored. My neighbour Sue contacted me on Friday to advise that her husband had recently been diagnosed with cancer. She requested that we read her statement on her behalf, in which she listed the people within approximately 500 metres of her property that have been diagnosed with cancer. I was shocked by what she came up with. I'm adding one more to the list. I did not want to disturb them, so I have not been given permission to give their name or address, but I can confirm they are also within the same area. Based on the history of DERWA's action in regard to Permapol and the other companies at these premises, we do not believe that DERWA will conduct an unbiased investigation. If you are in the slightest bit concerned about any part of my statement, please do the right thing and vote to approve this motion. These companies will not do the right thing unless correct controls are put in place and the regulators have the will to enforce the laws and regulation that protects us. We all have a duty of care to protect the community and the environment. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bias, for putting that thing forward. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr McEwen, for your statement. I'd now like to ask Mr Bill Denham to come forward and make his statement, please.
Bill Denham, regarding the question regarding the hours spent by officers for the event of September the 14th at Mudijong Oval, the answer was 61 hours. Now, I'm not criticising the actual work. It was really, really good, and thanks to the officers and the workers. But the problem I've got is, and I'm annoyed about it, is that $17,500, I come by that by 61 times 288 an hour, was spent stopping the netball children's families from using a facility car park that they had hired and paid for on their grand final day, just so that Peel Football League could generate an income that could have totalled $13,000 without incurring any costs, which obviously went back to the City of Mandurah. In my opinion, this is not value for ratepayers, the rates. They are subsidising outside identities. I will add that the Shire officers are looking at solutions so that this never occurs again, and thanks to them, because I hope this doesn't happen again. Thanks.
Thank you for your statement, Mr Denham. I'd now like to ask Mr Dyer to come forward and make his statement.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, councillors. In 1979, Bunnings started treating pine logs with CCA. In 1984-85, Bunnings asked the Cardup Fire Brigade to do a burn-off for them. And amongst the material to be burnt was 4 pallets. Each of them had 2 pallets, each had 4 44-gallon drums standing on them. They were rusty and leaking. It was according to the label on the drums, an arsenic compound. The next year, the Fire Brigade noticed treated logs in Lee's Pit, where the Shire burnt its tree loppings annually. The Cardup Brigade asked the Shire to separate the treated logs. The Shire refused, so the Brigade contacted the Perth Health Department. On investigation, they ordered the Shire to separate the treated logs. There was enough treated logs to fill an 8-tonne truck. At a meeting over this matter, there was a censure motion against the Shire, 147 out of 150 in attendance. In 2003, Permapol took over treating the logs. Since then, they have been challenged for pumping water from their lined catchment dam along a purpose-built drain to the Shire's drainage system. The water smelt foul. It was not fit to be put in the local drain. DWER ordered Permapol to put in a primary line dam, pump the water from the secondary dam after treatment to be used mainly on site, wetting logs and roadways. Only last year, they've been challenged again for breaching their conditions. Firms like these seem to think that they are above the regulators. Does the Shire not have a duty of care to keep a regular record of their activities and how and where the waste is disposed? I also believe water from the permacast may be running through Permapol's drainage because of the large compacted area where they store the concrete beams. If so, what is carried with the runoff? All the more reason to have somebody like a professional hydrologist monitored by somebody in the Shire or a government department. They need to be responsible to see it monitored, logged and regulated to safeguard the locals and the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Dyer, for your statement. Are there any members of the public gallery who would like to make a statement? Yes? If you'd like to please come forward. Please state your name and your suburb of the Shire, please.
Good evening, councillors, Shire President. Thank you for having me. My name is Sarah Ford. I've come on behalf of my not-for-profit Sarah Ford Foundation, and I'm from Byford. I've come tonight to ask that you please consider my application for a grant in consideration of the section that denotes that grants can't be spent on wages. And in light of that, I would like to just put forward first a question to the councillors, and that is, and not for answer, obviously, have you ever experienced a mental health condition? Have you ever known anybody with a mental health condition? Have you ever felt lonely? I'd just like the councillors to consider those questions when I'm reading through my statement, please. In 2021, the census stated that 51.1% of the Byford community are women, and 82.3% are lone females, which female parents, which increases the risk of isolation and loneliness. The census also reported that the highest reported long-term health condition, including depression and anxiety, was mental health conditions, which stood at 1,664. I'd like to then move on and draw the council's attention to the Health and Wellbeing Strategy 2020 to 2024, Section 20, Part 2, which spoke about community and growing a connected and inclusive community together. spoke about promoting a positive mental health and wellbeing initiatives for the community to be involved in, and to identify partnership opportunities that support state and federal mental health campaigns, i.e. special mental health awareness days, weeks, events, including funding. I have with me, and please forgive me because I wasn't aware of submitting to you the statement, a letter from Minister Templeman in favour of my work and the Foundation's work aligning with that of the inclusion, diversity and the state government is, I'll read from here, the state government is very committed to providing opportunities for inclusion, diversity and participation for Western Australians, and the Foundation's work aligns with and supports this mission. So I just wanted to include that. And then I would like to come back to the health and wellbeing strategy for 2020 to 2024, section 21, which states, part 2, which states, support community diversity, harmony and social wellbeing with particular emphasis on key vulnerable groups. I'd like to identify as women as a vulnerable group, especially according to the WA Department of Communities, who of course, as you know, have their own portfolio of women's interests, with Minister Sue Ellery obviously leading this team. Loneliness is one of the main key indicators of social wellbeing, and when loneliness builds in severity, it can have serious consequences for mental and physical health. And in the light of that, I'd like to draw everybody's attention to the meeting minutes of the Access and Inclusion Advisory Group on the 18th of March 2021 at 4:30 p.m. and the social inclusion update, which stated, the local Friends group is currently operating in Mandurah. This is a model where local residents offer their time and can be contacted by people who may be feeling lonely or isolated to have a chat. There is a view to meet for a coffee, a walk, or similar activity to make social connections, which can organically grow into friendships and/or larger group catch-ups and expanded networks and support systems. The Shire, as in the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale, would like to gauge the Access and Inclusion Advisory Group and the community's responsiveness to setting up similar community groups in the local area. The AIG members were supportive of the concept, but do not currently have the capacity to be champions of the group, and suggest having the Mandurah members present to a community forum to inform and hopefully recruit interested members. So in the light of those statements and things that I've just read out, I have currently started this walking group with the women of Byford, the local Byford community. It has been successful over the last 7 weeks. The ladies are very invested in this. And I have recently sent a grants application into community development with a list of statements from the ladies who support the group continuing because they found immense value from the group. I do have a statement with me tonight, which I won't read out now. Please forgive me again, I didn't realise I had to submit these. But like I say, I have submitted the other testimonials. The reason for my grant application and I appreciate not-for-profits are not supposed to be supported in the light of wages, is because a business has a start-up phase, and so does a not-for-profit. I am giving my full attention to this project. I am currently working to obtain my master's in medical and health science to further research in this area regarding women and mental health and exercise. I'm also studying to be a counsellor. And I'm in this not just advocating for myself, but I'm advocating for other not-for-profits as well, whose work can significantly impact the pressure placed on other local services such as GPs, counsellors and other service providers. And I'd ask that the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale consider being an innovator in the area of changing perhaps this part of the grant application process where you cannot apply for wages. In the support of this project, you're also supporting the furthering of the Sarah Ford Foundation and the continuation of not only the walk, but also other services that I am looking to provide in this area in 2026. I have already expressed my interest in the Byford Health Hub. The Sarah Ford Foundation will also aim to provide a niche service to the community of Serpentine Jarrahdale and neighbouring city of Armidale, with its first of its kind service in Western Australia for women who are survivors of domestic violence. The Strong, Fearless and Free programme, which is looking to launch in 2026. This programme will require trust in the community, trust that can only be established in a more effective manner with support from the Shire. By considering providing me with the grant, I can then put forward the good name of the Shire on my advertising and such. And standing here in front of you tonight, I can say that 20 years ago today, exercise saved my life. And it continues to be the source of hope for me on a daily basis, which is why I implore you to please consider what I'm asking. Please consider when you're making your decision that you may potentially influence a woman's life in a positive way, just like my story, through your support of the Sarah Ford Foundation and the Walking Group continuing into 2025. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms Ford. Were there other members of the public who would like to make a statement? Please come forward, Mrs Rich, and make your statement, please.
Good evening, councillors and officers. To serve as a local government mayor, president or councillor is a tremendous privilege and honour. You are tasked with providing strategic direction, not for your own personal views and ideas, but for the community you represent. You are tasked with many governance and compliance issues that the wider community are unaware of or do not understand, as they do not have all of the information available to them as members of council do. When elected, you make a declaration of office, which in part states that you undertake to carry out your duties faithfully, honestly, and with integrity, and to the best of your ability. All fields of service operate by a code of conduct, which are similar to the code of conduct that elected members agreed to abide by. The WA Police Force operates by a code of conduct which includes their values, their principles, and their responsibilities. They read in part our values: integrity. We are honest with ourselves, our colleagues, and our community.
Sorry, Ms Rich, I'll just stop you there. I'll just stop you there. Can you please, I understand you're talking about WA Police. I would appreciate if you made a statement pertaining to the activities of the Shire. Can you please bring it back into point,
I will
please?
get to that, thank you.
I'll give you some leniency at the moment, Mrs Rich, but again, I'll remind you.
I will
the
come
purpose
to
of
that.
this. Thank you, Mrs Rich.
Thank you. We ensure our conduct is professional and appropriate at all times. Teamwork. We expect appropriate behaviour and actions in line with relevant legislation, agency expectations and standards, challenging behaviours and actions that may put the WA Police Force reputation at risk or potentially cause harm to others or disquiet in the workplace. Our principles. We treat all people, colleagues and community members alike with the dignity and respect safeguarding their rights, particularly if they are vulnerable, a victim of crime, in our custody or wishing to make a complaint. We will not engage in harassment, victimisation, bullying or discrimination against any person. We are all responsible for ensuring this does not occur.
Sorry, Mr President, could I please interrupt? Can I please do a point of order and just ask relevance of this lining, please? It's a long time to be discussing something that's not related to the council directly. Thank you.
It is directly related to council, and I think if you let me get to the point, you will see where it is. Thank you.
Mrs Rich, you've now been speaking for 3 minutes. Of those 3 minutes you've been speaking, you have made no comment about the Shire. I would ask that you
I will
please
get to the
them.
part regarding the Shire.
Thank you, Mrs Rich.
Thank you. We will not act in any way that uses our influence, role or position to personal advantage or to the advantage of others we are associated with. We will only use our position and authority in accordance with the law and in the execution of our official duties, not for personal or commercial gain or to do harm to others. Our responsibilities. We are mindful that personal commentary made at any time may be attributed to the WA Police Force. We understand there are consequences if we fail to appropriately distance ourselves and or bring the reputation of the WA Police Force into disrepute. We will ensure our personal life does not compromise our public role and our actions, behaviours do not risk the impartiality expected of us by the community. We are trusted as the custodians and protectors of our official information and records. We only access, share and disclose agency-held information in the execution of our duty, as authorised by policy or legislation. We seek to advise about the appropriateness release of information if we are unsure.
Mrs Rich, I'm now going to stop your microphone. You have now been talking for in excess of 7 minutes. Sorry, I need glasses. So it's 4 minutes. You have not made any comments relating to council.
My next sentence will relate directly to council. You have given lenience to every other person that due to the time.
Ms Rich, I'll only allow you to continue making your statement if it goes directly to council. Otherwise, I'll ask you to return to your seat. Thank you.
It will go directly to council. On the 14th of August 2024, President Rob Coles shared to his President Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale Facebook page a SJ Waste Services post that the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale had posted earlier that day. A number of community members made comments on this shared post, with one community member asking, and I quote, "Also, is it true you don't pay rates?" In response, Shire President Rob Coles stated, and I quote, "I certainly do. Past presidents, in the plural, may not have." I submitted questions at the October 2024 OCM of which the response shows that officers are not aware of any such policy exempting Shire presidents from paying rates. Officers are not aware of any such resolution that exempts Shire presidents from paying rates, and that the Council has not been briefed by Shire officers since October 2023 with regards to any past Shire president having any current or historical outstanding rates. I submitted questions to tonight's meeting as heard by Council earlier with the responses from the officers. As you will surmise from the responses to public questions, there is no way for a past president to prove the statement made by President Coles wrong, as the Shire's hands are tied by legislation. There is no factual substance to the response provided by Councillor Coles to a community member in an open public forum. As the person who is to speak on behalf of the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale, this kind of misinformation is harmful to the council and the organisation as a whole. Councillors, the President speaks on your behalf. That being said, the Council of 2024 is responsible for the slandering of the character and reputation of Mr Ledham's deceased Shire President, 1961 to 1964, Mr Clem Kentish, deceased Shire President, 1964 to 1989, Mr Eric Senior, deceased Shire President, 1989 to 1992, Mr David Hello, deceased Shire President, 1992 to 1996, Mrs Colleen Rankin, Shire President, 1996 to 1999, Mrs Jan Starr, Shire President, 1999 to 2003, Mrs Denise Needham, Shire President, 2003 to 2009, Dr Sheila Twine, Shire President, 2009 to 2011, Mr Bruce Moore, Shire President, 2011 to 2013, Mr Keith Ellis, Shire President, 2013 to 2015, Mr John Aaron, Shire President, 2015 to 2017, and myself, Michelle Rich, Shire President, 2017 to 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Rich. I will remind you and all members of the public, if anyone has a concern about any serving police officer, they can send an email to police.complaints@police.wa.gov.au. Thank you for your statement. Is there anyone else from the gallery like to come forward and make a statement? Thank you, Mrs Bond.
Mine is really quick. And I'm not going to have a go at the police department or the councillors. Oh, maybe not the police, but... Isn't it time this council stopped spending money on wasteful matters? There are ratepayers in this shire struggling to keep a roof over their heads, pay their bills and feed their families. I'm appalled that the waste on consultant fees, handouts to anyone who wants free yoga, walking through the forest, monthly free coffee so 4 or 5 women can sit and chat, and on it goes. You have pushed the tip survey until it has rendered many of us turning off because of boredom. How about taking an interest in the wildlife in the Shire, in particular the starving black cockatoos? Because of councillor ignorance and personal agendas, operating a Bush Forever site will not have cockatoo tubes erected in it, although these birds are spending more time in it feeding their young and looking for food. Shame on your selfish behaviour. Start working for the ratepayers of the Shire. Could we get the pulpit back, please, because this is annoying.
Thank you, Mrs Bond. Was there another? Thank you. Please come forward and make your statement.
Good evening, everyone. My statement first is to say how appalled I am.
Sorry, can you please state your name and...
Jane Taylor, Oakford.
Thank you, Ms Taylor.
The exhibition that was just had astounds me. This woman is got sour grapes for being voted out as president.
Ms Taylor, it's not about me or other people, but what
I'm sorry, but her display was disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful.
Ms Taylor, I hear what you're saying, but unless you've got a statement that's not derogatory to any person, I'd ask you to refrain from making a statement. Some would say that as a president, I am responsible to the people. I'm happy for people to come and ask questions about me. If there's something you'd like to make a statement to, please do, but please do not
All right.
please don't criticise members of the public. Please don't criticise current councillors, ex-councillors or staff. Over to you. Thank you.
This is in relation to an email that I sent directly to you during the week in regards to the Port Hedland Council vote that was taken in the anti-COVID vaccination motion that was passed 5-2. The Chief Executive was instructed to write to all of the authorities nationwide to immediately stop the use of Moderna and Pfizer. And another Member of Parliament, Mr Broadbent of Ashfield in Victoria, has also presented this to the Parliament and has stated that 145 times the strength that was used in these vaccinations is in regard to the TGA's own stated limits, and it's 145 times greater. And 52 eminent scientists have joined in this statement that the synthetic DNA is contaminated and that everyone that has had these shots needs to be aware that they possibly could have received one of these tainted shots. I'm asking whether this council has any intention, once receiving this correspondence, to notify the constituents in this area. And the WA Premier has made a statement to the local papers condemning the Port Hedland action that they have taken and have told them to stick to knitting, which in the face of all councils should be an absolute insult to your contribution to the residents of these areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Taylor. I don't think there's anyone else wanting to come forward and make a statement. That being the case, we'll move on to, or before I do that, I will declare public statement finished at 8:16 p.m, and I thank everyone for making their statements tonight. That brings on to agenda item number 4. Agenda item number 4 is petitions and deputations, which there are nil. That brings us on to agenda item number 5, which is the President's report. So good evening, elected members, residents and ratepayers. Welcome to the November 2024 Ordinary Council meeting. As we move into summer, we have plenty to look forward to here in the Shire. The Shire's vibrant events season kicks off with lights, sirens and superheroes. This is a fun, interactive family event with mascots, fire demonstrations and food trucks, all reinforcing the important message about keeping safe in the summer months. Christmas is just a matter of weeks away, and the Shire's hugely popular Christmas Street Festival is again on, and this year it's on Friday the 6th of December, right out the front here in Mundijong. And we're hoping to beat last year's record crowd of 5,500 people. I'm looking forward to seeing our community come together in numbers, again to celebrate the meaning of Christmas and connect with loved ones. And there'll be a Christmas video that we're doing this year that actually reminds people in the community about the importance of Christmas, the real message of Christmas, and the opportunity for hope, forgiveness, and us moving forward. The popular SJ Farmers Market celebrates its 4th anniversary this month. What started as a local initiative has now grown to a fantastic community institution and another great way to catch up with family and friends, and not to mention the councillors on the last Saturday of the month. I encourage everyone to continue supporting the markets. It's a wonderful opportunity to connect with our local producers and celebrate what makes our Shire so special. So thank you to the SJ Food and Farm Alliance and everyone who has worked so hard to make the market such a success over the last 4 years. So volunteers are a bedrock of the SJ community and are often the reason why we are able to run vibrant Shire activities. So last Thursday, I had the pleasure to host a group of dedicated volunteers at the Byford Districts Country Club for the Jingle and Mingle Sporting and Community Group Sundowner. It's the second time the Shire has run this event, and again, it was a fantastic opportunity for us as councillors and staff to recognise the wonderful work that our community do, especially the wonderful volunteers in our Shire. Finally, I'd like to reflect on Remembrance Day, a time to honour the men and women who have served and made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. Every day we should reflect on the freedoms we enjoy because of their service. On the morning 11th of November, I joined the Serpentine, Jarrahdale, RSL and community members at the Byford Memorial as we pause to remember those heroes, those men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice to make our country what it is today. Remembrance Day is rightly a moving occasion. I'm proud of how our community shows its respect and gratitude. Thank you. That brings us on to agenda item number 6. Agenda item number 6 is declaration of elected members and officers' interest. And there's a couple of disclosures of interest that I have this evening. Firstly, Councillor Tricia Duggan, the Deputy Shire President, has declared impartiality interest in item 10.4.1, the Jarrahdale Trail proposals. The nature of the extent is that the Deputy President is the Chair of the Jarrahdale Rail Bikes Steering Committee. The extent of her interest is as a sitting member of the group to which the agenda item refers. The second conflict is Councillor Courtney Mazzini. She declared impartiality interest in item 10.4.2, Byford and Districts Country Club requests financial support. The nature of her interest is impartiality. The extent of the interest is that Courtney Mazzini is that she sits on the Activate Byford Committee with the Byford and Districts Country Club Vice Chair. The same item being 10.4.2, Councillor Shay Mack has declared an impartiality interest, being that he is a member of the Byford and Districts Country Club. The extent of the interest is that he is a member of the Byford and Districts Country Club and sometimes participates in their social bowls, sometimes not very well. The next declaration is from myself, President Robert Coles. I wish to declare an impartiality interest in agenda item 10.4.2, which is the Byford and Districts Country Club requests financial assistance. The conflict is impartiality because I'm a financial member of the club. I'm a social member of the Byford and Districts Country Club. The final disclosure of interest is again from Councillor Courtney Mazzini. She's declaring an impartiality interest in agenda item 9.2. The extent of the interest is through marriage, a relative is a director of the company in relation to agenda item 9.2. Unless, Mr CEO, there's some other conflicts, they are the ones that I have in front of me.
None more received, Mr President, but of course anyone can declare a conflict at any time.
Thank you, Mr CEO. That brings us on
Mr President, can I just also declare an impartiality interest in 10.4.2? I'm also a paid member of the Byford and Districts Country Club, please.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. I think there is a blue form in your pack if you could fill that out, and that is now recorded as a impartiality interest. That brings us on to agenda item 7, which is confirmation of minutes of previous council meetings. Agenda item 7.1 is ordinary council meeting on the 21st of October 2024. Is there a councillor who is happy to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Bice. Is that to move the officer's recommendation and approve the minutes? Thank you, Councillor Bice. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is anyone opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us on to agenda item number 8. Agenda item number 8 is receipt of minutes or reports and considerations of adoption of recommendations from committee meetings held since the previous council meeting, which there is nil. That brings us on to agenda item 9. Agenda item 9 is motions of notice which have been given. Agenda item 9.1 is notice of motion, financial support for the Sarah Ford Foundation. This is a motion that myself has circulated, so I'm happy to move the motion. Is there a councillor happy to second the motion as circulated? Thank you, Councillor Mack. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. I will open the debate. Notwithstanding what we've heard tonight from Ms Sarah Ford, this is a motion that I brought forward simply to assist the Sarah Ford Foundation. I think it's really important that we separate, it's the foundation, it's not the individual. It's a foundation that's doing some great work, and as I said, notwithstanding what Ms Ford said this evening in her statement, on the website quite clearly it is something that is very, very clear that we need, and it is to support particularly women in the area of the Shire. It's not certainly a Byford-centric program, it is for the wider Shire, and it also is linked to something that is a scourge in our society, and that is family and domestic violence. It's very poignant, I think, that Ms Ford alluded to exercise and what has helped her. I think she showed great courage in saying that. But quite simply, anything we can do as a Shire, anything we can do as councillors, anything I can do as the President to help our people, to help disadvantaged and vulnerable people in the Shire, And when you think about those people in the Shire who are vulnerable, who are disadvantaged, the first thing that comes to mind is people that are lonely, people that are victim of family violence, and as I said, it is a scourge in our society. And one thing that wasn't mentioned tonight about the values of the West Australian Police Force is duty. And one of the things about duty is doing what is right. And I think the duty that we have as councillors needs to come forward tonight in this motion, because what it is doing, it is allowing someone in our community to deliver a program that has already had proven results. And I note that the local member, Hugh Jones, promoted it a couple of months ago when the walk went past his office and he came out and joined Ms Ford and the group of females that were participating in the walk. This isn't a sugar hit. This is something that will do 20 walks. And it is something that will allow our vulnerable people in the community to get that support, that isolation, that need to have someone to talk to, that positive effect of exercise. It ticks all the boxes in this motion. Notwithstanding the fact that our process is robust in terms of grants are not for personal wages, and that is something that I need to address. It may well be that moving forward, the Sarah Ford Foundation can make other applications to Lottery West, to other foundations and support services in the wider area. But for me, the reason I put this motion forward is let's act now. There is a need for it. There was success in the first one. There is a need for this to continue. It may well be that moving forward, the Sarah Ford Foundation can find other options for funding. But at this time, we have the means, we have the ability. All we need to do is make the decision. Councillor Mack, would you like to speak for the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to add, I'm the first person to talk to policies and procedures, and I note that there is a part here that puts this in conflict with our current policy. We do have an avenue to bring it to a notice of motion where we deem it appropriate. I think value for money, putting 20 walks at $75 per walk is being good value for money for the mental health benefits this will produce, and hopefully alternate funding opportunities can be found from there once we can show how much of an advantage this is making in our community. So I certainly think this is well worth supporting, the change to our current policies to support this motion as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mack. Councillor Duggan, would you like to speak against?
Thanks very much, Mr. President. This is by no means speaking ill against the great work that's done by the Sarah Ford Foundation. That goes without comment, and I certainly agree with the statements that have related to that this evening. My concern is that when we're breaking policy, we are then creating precedents. We have many volunteers in our community, some who do roles that are very closely linked to what's been requested here. The Monday morning teas up in Jarrahdale at Bruno Giannotti have been organised by volunteers for many months, in fact probably years. If we are to set a precedence where we start paying for wages, we then open up the door for these other people who have been involved in these community events for a long time to also say, what about me? And as I say, if we set the precedence when we break a policy, we then have to follow through with it. For that reason, I cannot support the motion as it stands, and I foreshadow if this fails, the officer recommendation with a small variation, which is that one that requests the Chief Executive Officer to include their request for $1,000 on provision of receipt ex-GST for purchase of coffee for participants of the Women's Walk in Byford and surrounds as part of their current funding application through the Shire's General Grant Program October round. And point 2 is to remain as stated in the alternate officer's recommendation. I would like to just bring that to my fellow councillors' consideration that we have already agreed as part of our community grants to fund money towards this, which I was very happy to see. So the Sarah Ford Foundation, has certainly not been supported. It is being supported, and the alternate recommendation also offers further support for consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is anyone who'd like to speak for the motion? That being the case, I will close. Precedents are an interesting thing. So precedents, by the nature of the word, means that you do something and then you need to follow on from it. And I acknowledge the importance of precedents. But I also acknowledge, and it was alluded to tonight by members of the public, our role, responsibilities and duties. Maybe duty wasn't mentioned, but certainly our roles and responsibilities were as councillors. And policy is there. Policy is a guide. Policy is something that we can amend as councillors. And I think there's a fundamental difference in this motion. And what I would talk to is the fact that policy normally is designed by staff. Policy is designed by staff and adopted by council. We, as elected representatives, in fact, I'll put it in more succinct terms. If we had policies, there'd be no need, and if those policies were followed carte blanche, there'd be no need for elected representatives because there'd be a policy. So something like a planning thing, no need for council, it's a policy. Members of the public want to come and speak to council about a cricket pitch, concerns with homeless people in the area, domestic violence. They come and speak to a councillor because we are here to listen to the community, to respond to the community, and as I said some 12 months ago, to listen, to care and to act. If we as councillors don't listen, if we as councillors don't care, if we as councillors don't act, there's no point in us being here. You might as well have a board of directors, or you might as well have public servants to sit here and instigate and implement policy. So notwithstanding the fact that there is a policy that says grant funding should not be used for salary, this is a unique situation. This may well set a precedent, but at the end of the day, it's not altering the policy. So if there's one of my colleagues here as a councillor that would like to do something similar for a coffee group in Jarrahdale or for a knitting group in Serpentine, then there is nothing stopping any councillor coming forward and putting a motion up for it to be debated, for it to be discussed, and for it to be looked at on its merits. To me, this is a no-brainer. It's talking about vulnerable people in our society. It's talking about ladies, females, and it is a program that goes some way to addressing the scourge in our society. I am damn proud of my 20-odd years as a police officer. I'm damn proud of being able to help people. I'm damn proud of putting this motion forward to support a member of the public who is doing all she can to support women who are suffering from domestic violence, who are lonely and who are struggling even. I commend this motion. All those in favour? For all those against? Motion is carried 4-3. That brings on to agenda item 9.2. Do you need me to pause, Madam Secretary? All good. That brings on agenda item 9.2, notice of motion, water testing of the Permapole site in Cardup. Councillor Bias has put this motion forward. He has circulated an alternate motion. Councillor Bias, would you like to move that alternate motion?
Before I do, Shire President, can I ask a question?
You certainly can.
I'd like to ask my question to the CEO because I would note that there have been a number of emails circulating today, and I appreciate that not all councillors might have been across everything. So I just ask that the officers would provide an update to any communications they've received from the Department of Water DWER and what that new information is, please.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Byers. Mr CEO, are you able to provide a response, please?
Thanks, Mr President. I might ask the Director of Development Services if he can provide the response. He's been handling that matter. I'm sure he's quite willing to provide a detailed response, Mr President.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Director of Development Services, are you able to assist the council in the question, please?
Certainly, through you, Mr President, and thank you for the question, Councillor Byers. So 11:45 this morning, an officer from the DWER wrote to myself confirming that on Thursday, the 7th of November, DWER officers attended Permapol and conducted a site inspection to assess compliance against the current issued licence L5982/1994/12. They also advised that additionally water and soil samples were taken both on-site and off-site to determine if any environmental impact from the operations of Permapol exists. They then stated that DWER is awaiting analysis results of the samples taken, and then they end it there.
Thank you, Director. Does that answer your question, Councillor Byers, or do you have a follow-up?
No, that answers my question perfectly. Thank you, Director, CEO and Shire President. With that context, Shire President, I'd like your leave to move the alternate motion that I circulated earlier today, which is an alternative to the alternative officer's recommendation, please.
Thank you, Councillor Byers. Are you happy that that's the one that's displayed now on the screen in front of you and on the other screens?
Let me double check. It is, thank you. And if I may, I would just point out how it's different from
Certainly.
the alternate officer recommendation. So there is some adjustment, obviously deleting the first point, which related to writing to the DWER and asking them to commence this investigation. Now that we know that has occurred, some minor changing to the tense for that to read and make sense. But importantly, for those in the gallery who are interested and my fellow councillors of interest, the final point being that and this is the addition to the alternative officer recommendation, that we request the CEO bring a report to council detailing all of the technical reports from the DWER investigation, detailing their findings, methodology, planned actions, and any other relevant documentations that the DWER produce as part of their investigation. So I'm happy to move what is on the screen, Mr President. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byers. Is there a councillor who's happy to second the motion? Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. And I think, did you do a wording for the reasons different to the officer's recommendation, Councillor Byers?
I didn't prepare some, but words to the effect of to ensure that council has visibility of the DWER investigation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byers. Okay, before we move on to agenda item 10, to Chief Executive Officer reports, I will go through the en bloc. As part of the Shire's efforts to ensure the efficiency and effectiveness of meetings, tonight's meeting will include the opportunity for matters to be considered by Council en bloc. This means that a group of matters dealt with in multiple reports can be grouped together, considered and voted upon as a single motion. Matters that are not to be included in en bloc decisions are those which require absolute majority, matters to be determined behind closed doors, declared interests made in relation to the item, and deputations or statements made in relation to the item. Officers have prepared a list of matters that meet this criteria. I'll now read those report numbers and titles and invite any elected members to identify any matters they wish to be removed from en bloc consideration. Removing a matter from en bloc consideration does not signify objection to a matter and does not require the matter to be debated. Removing a matter from en bloc simply means that the matter is to be considered separately. The matters that have been identified for consideration en bloc at tonight's meeting are as follows. Agenda item 10.1.1, proposed road naming application, lot 786, 787, 788, Walker Road in Serpentine. 10.1.2, which is proposed road naming application, lots 59 to 61 Briggs Road and lot 62 Thomas Road, Byford. Agenda item 10.1.3, endorsement of Murray Woodland Management Plan. 10.1.4, local planning scheme number 3, amendment number 9, short-term rental accommodation. 10.1.5, which is draft economic development and tourism strategy 2024-2034, consent to advertise. 10.2.1, I know needs to be removed because the Deputy Shire President wanted that removed, so we'll remove 10.2.1. Thank you. 10.2.2, award request for tender Nicholson Road widening and improvement. 10.3.1, confirmation of payment of creditors October 2024. 10.3.2, monthly financial report September 2024. 10.3.4, review of asset management policy 2.1.1 and asset management strategy 2020-2024. 10.4.3, council policy review 5.1.3, lease and licensee management. 10.4.4, award request for tender RFT 11-2024 bushfire mitigation services. 10.5.1, minutes of the Rivers Regional Council Ordinary Council meeting 17th October 2024. And 10.5.2, council policy review urban and rural verge policy. Could councillors please indicate if they wish to remove any of the aforementioned reports from the matters to be considered on block? And we did remove that 10.2.1, Councillor Duggan. That being the case, is there a councillor who is happy to move a motion to pass all those aforementioned agenda items on block? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Councillor Jarrett, you happy to second? Is anyone opposed to moving those items on block? Motion is carried unanimously. That now brings us to agenda item 10, which is Chief Executive Officer reports. 10.1 is Development Services reports. 10.1.1, proposed road naming application. Lots 786, 787 and 788 Walker Road, Serpentine. That has been moved on block. Agenda item 10. Did you want me to pause? Agenda item 10.1.2, proposed road naming application, lots 59 to 61 Briggs Road and lot 62 Thomas Road, Byford. That was carried on block. That brings us to agenda item 10.1.3. Agenda item 10.1.3 is endorsement of Murray Woodland Management Plan. That was carried on block. Agenda item 10.1.4 is local planning scheme number 3, amendment number 9, short-term rental accommodation. That too was carried or passed on block. Agenda item 10.1.5, draft economic development and tourism strategy 2024-2034, consent to advertise. That was passed on block. That now brings us to agenda item 10.2, infrastructure services report. Agenda item 10.2.1, award request for tender, RFT 17-2024, Carnup Road and Richardson Street roundabout upgrade. I think, Mr CEO, you wanted to ask a question?
Oh, thanks, Mr. President. Maybe just make a comment if I can. I know there's been some questions by elected members. If there are questions by elected members of the confidential evaluation panel report, could I respectfully suggest that council might consider moving this item to consider behind closed doors? If council is happy just to consider the matter as it is in the public realm, we can obviously consider it now, but if there's confidential questions and things, it might be better to move it later into the meeting, Mr. President, but it's up to the council.
Thank
to
you,
consider.
Mr CEO. Are there any councillors who'd like to ask any questions pertaining to agenda item 10.2.1?
Mr. President, if I may request understanding order 3.9 that we do move it to later on the meeting when the meeting's closed, please, because there are certainly questions I'd like to ask that are of a confidential matter. Thanks.
Certainly. So you're moving a motion to move the item to the back end of the agenda under confidential attachments?
Yes, thanks. And to defer it for consideration to the last item of the meeting.
10.6.3.
10.6.3. Is there a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Councillor Mack. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That motion will now be considered at 10.3.6.
10.6.3.
That was right, was it? 10.3.6?
10.6.3.
Thank you, Mr CEO. That brings us to agenda item 10.2.2, which is award request for tender RFT 18-2024 Nicholson Road widening and improvement. That was passed en bloc. That brings us to agenda item 10.3, corporate services reports. 10.3.1 is confirmation of payment of creditors. That too was passed en bloc. That brings us to agenda item 10.3.2, monthly financial report, September 2024. That was passed en bloc. That brings us to agenda item 10.3.3, budget adjustments for 2023-2024 carry forward items. I believe there was an alternate motion. Or was that for the next one, Councillor Duggan? Okay, so there was no alternate motions. Is there a councillor who is happy to move a motion in regards to this agenda item? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is that the officer's recommendation?
Thanks, Mr President.
Thank you. Is there a councillor who is happy to second the motion as put forward by Councillor Duggan, which is the officer's recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us on to agenda item 10.3.4. Agenda item 10.3.4 was carried en bloc. The next agenda item is 10.3.5, which is council and committee meeting dates for 2025. There has been an alternate motion circulated by Councillor Mazzini. Would you like to move that, Councillor Mazzini?
Yes, thank you, Mr President.
Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. I'm happy to second that with the addition of, or amendment I should say, of the February meeting being on the 10th of February instead of the 17th of February. Are you happy with that?
I am, Mr President. If you could just quickly explain what the reasoning behind that is. Sorry, I know you mentioned it in the Q&A, but I've forgotten.
So there's two things. One is February OCM will be the first of the year. So I think bringing it forward would be beneficial. The second thing is February OCM is when the waste transfer station report will be coming forward. So I think having it earlier in the month is a good thing. And the other reason is I'm unavailable on the 17th of February.
Thank you, Mr President. I'm very happy to agree to that amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that would then have a follow-on effect.
Yes, Mr President. Sorry, just pointing out, would need to, the mover and seconder would need to consent to changing 4A as well, which would need to be the week before rather than the 10th of February, would need to be the 3rd of February.
So the Q&A on the 3rd of February in line with the OCM on the 10th of February.
If the mover and seconder are happy with that?
I'm happy with that.
If you're happy with that, Councillor Mazzini, I'm certainly happy with that. Is there any... Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Mr President. We'll also need to change point 5. The PCF date is for the 3rd of February. So perhaps that could, the mover and seconder could consider whether they want to have the 3rd of February as a PCF date or
the 17th or the 17th of February could be a PCF.
Yep.
I prefer the 17th of February for the PCF.
Thank you, Mr CEO. So that's 5A would then become 17 Feb.
Yep. And for the benefit of the gallery, Mr President, perhaps Councillor Mazzini can just outline the other changes that her alternative motion proposes as well.
Thank you, Mr CEO.
Thank you. Just point 1, I am proposing that we keep the meeting, the OCMs at 7 p.m. And therefore follow on to point 2, keeping our committee meetings at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. Is there any councillors who are opposed to the alternate motion as moved and seconded? Motion is carried unanimously. And we will need a reason for the difference in the officer's recommendations, please, Councillor Mazzini.
Sure. To allow for meetings to stay at a more convenient time to assist those with work or home commitments. Perfect, thank you.
That brings us to agenda item 10.3.6, which is Corporate Business Plan Performance Report, July to September 2024. Is there a councillor who is happy to move a motion in relation to this agenda item? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there a councillor who is happy to second? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us to agenda item 10.3.7. 10.3.7, September 2024 quarterly budget review. And there is an alternate motion that's been circulated by the Deputy President, Councillor Duggan. Would you like to move that, Councillor Duggan?
Yes, please, Mr President.
Can you just please confirm that's the one that's being displayed on your screen and the other screens? So it's just the addition of paragraph 2.
That's correct, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there a councillor who is happy to second the alternate motion? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. And we need a reason for difference, please, Councillor Duggan.
Certainly, thanks. The reason for difference is for consideration of required plant equipment for the Shire.
I think you might have to say that again, please.
For consideration of required plant equipment for the Shire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Are you happy with that?
Thank you.
That brings us to agenda item 10.4, which is community engagement reports. 10.4.1 is the Jarrahdale Trail proposals. Is there a councillor who is happy to move an officer's recommendation, or move a motion, I should say?
Mr President, a couple of questions regarding this, if I may.
Yes, Councillor Mack.
To the CEO, we often see letters of support coming from the Shire and they don't necessarily come to the council table. Why have these two come to the chamber?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Mack. Mr CEO, are you happy to provide a response?
Thank you, Mr President. Happy to answer that. Thanks, Councillor Mack. Officers thought that, you're right, officers write letters of support all the time for all manner of things. Particularly they normally, though, are just as a letter of support for a particular funding application for a particular purpose. I think the community engagement team wrote one recently for the CRC to replace their sign at the front. We thought that these requests for support were more general in nature and more project-based rather than a one-off funding application, and in time could actually have some potential impact on resources of the Shire, although none of them are requesting that at this point in time. But we thought it was a good idea for the council to consider that and then provide its support or otherwise.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Does that answer your question, Councillor Mack?
It does, and I do have a follow-up, if I may.
Yes.
I note that the Recreational Trail Bike Riders Association have been to a policy concept forum to explain their plans, but the Jarrahdale Bike Trail has not. Is there any reasons for that?
No reasons, Councillor Mack. If the council was of a mind to request that, it could do that. That's up to council to consider, I guess.
And I guess my last question then would be, is there any foreseeable problems with deferring this to a PCF to come back to council for councillors to get a motion for the point 1?
Are you happy to answer that question, Mr CEO?
Mr President, I might ask the Director of Community Engagement if he's aware of any issue around that. Yeah, I guess, presume you're talking about the Jarrahdale Bike Trail proposal?
Yes, that is correct.
Director and Community Engagement, you happy to... You look very pensive.
I'm not aware of any specific deadline for the JCC, but The question would probably be best directed towards the group. The request has been with Shire officers for a few months, and I'm assuming from the JCC's perspective, they'd like to have an indication of support or otherwise from the Shire as soon as practicably possible. But that's all I can offer at this point.
Thank you, Director. Does that answer your question, Councillor Mack?
It does, and with that, I would like to put forward an alternate motion, if I may.
Yep, we haven't got anyone that's moved it. Normally my procedure for meetings is we have got an alternate motion. A motion that has been, I'll start again. There is a motion on there. You're going to now move an alternate motion, is that right? No one has moved or seconded the officer's report. You're now moving.
That's correct, but I'm at your discretion which way you'd like to go.
That's right. What's your proposed motion?
I'd like to put forward the recommendation with point 1 change to notes the request from the Jarrahdale Community Collective regarding the Jarrahdale Bike Trail proposal, and request that the Chief Executive Officer writes to the Jarrahdale Community Collective to invite them to present the details of this project to Council at a policy concept forum, and point 2 and point 3 to be as per the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Mack.
Perhaps for the benefit of the Minute Secretary, Councillor Mack, can I just ask you just to repeat that again a bit slower, the changes to point 1?
So it'll be the first line is the same through to regarding the Jarrahdale Bike Trail proposal, and then change to and request the Chief Executive Officer writes to the Jarrahdale Community Collective. Inviting them to present the details of this project to Council at a policy concept forum.
And delete the rest of the... Yep.
Thank you.
Is there a councillor who's happy to second the alternate motion? Thank you, Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is there anyone opposed to the alternate motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Councillor Mack, would you like to open debate?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Look, this motion, this project, everything looks great about it. It is really about due process here. We as councillors are going to be writing a letter of support for a project that I haven't had presented to me. I don't know if any other councillors have. It looks great. Everything looks wonderful to it. But I do note that in past, when we've had these more complex letters of recommendation, we have had them all come to a policy concept forum, and I would like us to be consistent with that and see this one come to a policy concept forum as well. I would also like to note the great work that the JCC have been doing and the other community groups who are involved, and I think they do great work in our community, and I would really look forward to hearing about this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mack. Councillor Bishop, would you like to speak or reserve?
I'll reserve, but just a quick question, if I may.
Yes, you can.
Just around this letter of in-principle support, is there any indication that this is time sensitive at all?
Thank you for the question. I think that was almost answered before by the Director of Community Engagement when he was looking so pensive before. Is that correct, Director?
Yes, not aware that it is time sensitive, only that the Shire has had the request from the JCC for a few months now, and I would make the assumption that the JCC would like to know as soon as practicably possible council support or otherwise for the project.
Thank you, Director. Does that answer your question, Councillor Bishop?
Yeah, thank you.
And you want to reserve?
Yes, I guess.
Councillor Duggan, would you like to speak against?
Thanks, Mr. President. I find this incredibly frustrating because, as alluded to, this has been sitting with the Shire for a number of months. The feasibility study is almost complete. We are literally at a standstill after working exceptionally hard and exceptionally fast for 3 months. We cannot negotiate with the Department of Planning, Land and Heritage until we have in principle support. If a councillor, last week it was discussed that I'd already put in my letter of impartiality stating that I was the chair of this committee. If someone had wanted to ask me questions enough to put forward an alternate motion, they could have asked me any time. I have got 14 PowerPoints that I have presented to everyone from Rita Safiotti through to Hugh Jones, through to the Business SJ, through to anyone who will listen to us. We are so close to being there, and I promise you the delay in this by 2 or 3 weeks could be the difference between us being able to get the funding or not, because we have got a meeting with Rita Safiotti next week. If it does not come through and we do not get that meeting because we do not have in principle support, we will literally lose a significant amount of funding. That is all I can say and remain confidential, but I cannot tell you the importance of getting this motion either supported or not. And if it is not supported tonight, it literally will be the death knell for this project. And I'm frustrated that this was not brought to my attention. And I would be more than happy to stand up there and do a talk about this any time in the last 3 months. I was never asked. And yet it is absolutely 100% public knowledge that I'm the chair of the Jarrahdale Rail Bikes Steering Committee. If this motion is to fail, I wish to put forward the officer's recommendation with a point 4 saying that we recognise the Jarrahdale Bike Trails project to be known as the Jarrahdale Rail Bikes, which is what it is known as. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is anyone else like to speak for the motion? Councillor Mack, would you like to close debate, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. And yeah, I echo your sentiments, Councillor Duggan. This is completely frustrating to find ourselves here and to hear from you for the first time that this is time sensitive. It needs to come. To not have had this come to a PCF, as is the normal process. As ever since I've been here, we have seen these things come through. I do now find myself in the hard position to either what I would deem as cut a corner and push this through, because it is going to be time sensitive. Look, I hope that this is all wonderful, and if it goes through and there are no problems, that is brilliant. I just hold concerns that we have not followed what I deem to be the normal processes on this, and that does give me some concern.
Mr. President, can I make a personal statement, please?
Yes, you can.
I'm more than happy to do a PCF after this evening if it is deemed useful. However, like I said, if this is not passed tonight, we're literally at the point where there is no point in us even doing a PCF. I would have been more than happy to have shared the PowerPoint of the whole project. I would have been more than happy to answer any questions. The fact that it's waited until it's got to this point is absolutely appalling.
All those in favour of the motion? All those against? Motion has lost 1-6. There was a motion, or a word escapes me. There was foreshadowed. I got there eventually. Foreshadowed motion. Councillor Duggan, do you want to move that foreshadowed motion?
Yes, please. Thanks, Mr. President.
And that was with an addition of?
With an addition, as recommended by the officers, with the addition of point 4, recognise the Jarrahdale Bike Trail project to be known as Jarrahdale Rail Bikes.
We'll just allow that to be added.
Perhaps Councillor Duggan, can I ask you, for the Minute Secretary's benefit, you'd repeat the point 4, please?
Recognises the Jarrahdale Bike Trail project. It's the Jarrahdale Bike Trail project. As Jarrahdale Rail Bikes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there a councillor who is happy to second? Councillor Bishop, you happy to second? Or you got a question?
Yeah, I'm happy to second if we could also have an amendment to formalise a presentation coming to a PCF, just so councillors do have that benefit.
Councillor Duggan, are you happy to include that?
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you. So it'll be
With another
paragraph.
small amendment that it be done at the next PCF, thanks, so it's done immediately.
I'm going to look to the CEO after we spoke today about the amount of stuff we need to discuss for Christmas. Is that workable, Mr. CEO?
Mr. President, there are a lot of things on the PCF, the final PCF for the year, which is the 24th of November. If council resolves that's the priority, that's the priority. So,
thank you, Mr. CEO.
With that in mind, I'm happy to keep it at the original, thanks.
So you're not happy with the alternate, or the amendment, I should say, that Councillor Bishop has put forward?
No, I'm happy for it to be at a PCF, but not at the next available if it's going to be restricting on what the Shire staff are required to share with us before Christmas.
Thank you. We'll just make sure we're both happy, as in you as a mover, and then the seconder, Councillor Bishop, with the wording that's now going to be added to paragraph number 5.
the wording might be request the CEO write to the Jarrahdale Community Collective inviting them to make a presentation to a future PCF on Jarrahdale rail bikes.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Duggan?
I'm happy with that.
And
If
Councillor
the-
Bishop?
Yes, thanks.
Can we add the end there on Jarrahdale rail bikes, please? Yep. No, leave it with it. No, Gerald, can we on to venture to future PCF on Jarrahdale rail bikes? Thank you.
Councillor Duggan, are you happy with the addition of number 4 and number 5?
Can we perhaps change right to the Jarrahdale Community Collective, inviting them to present? Sorry, Mr. President.
That's fine, Mr. Sewell. I'll make sure that the mover and seconder are happy, because we've sort of...
I'm happy with that if the seconder's happy.
You're happy? Thank you. So both mover and seconder are happy. Is there anyone opposed to the motion?
Not opposed, but a question.
Certainly,
if I
Councillor
may.
Vice.
It's not to go into the motion, but I'd be interested in seeing those presentations. Councillor Duggan, if you could circulate them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boss. I'll call again. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings on to agenda...
We wanted a reason for the difference from the officer recommendation from Councillor Duggan, if we can, please.
Certainly. The reason for difference is to recognise the rail bike project by its working name and to share information with fellow councillors, with the councillors.
Are you happy as it's worded now on the screen?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Okay, that brings on to agenda item 10.4.2, which is the Byford Districts Country Club request financial support. Is there a councillor who is happy to move a motion pertaining to this?
Mr President, I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there a councillor who's happy to second the officer's recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us to agenda item 10.4.3. 10.4.3 is Council Policy Review, 5.1.3 Lease and Licence Management. That has been passed on block. That brings us to agenda item 10.4.4, which is award request for tender RFT 11-2024 Bushfire Mitigation Services. That too has been passed on block. That brings us to agenda item 10.4.5, No, it doesn't. There's no such thing as 10.4.5. Let's go to 10.5, which is Executive Services Reports. 10.5.1 is minutes of the Rivers Regional Council meeting. Ordinary Council meeting 17th of October 2024. That was passed en bloc. That brings us to agenda item 10.5.2, Council Policy Review, Urban and Rural Verge Policy. That too has been passed en bloc. That then brings us to confidential items. I would request a councillor move a motion to close the meeting to members of the public. Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Councillor Bice, are you happy to second? Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. I would respectfully ask the members of the gallery to please leave. Madam Governance Officer, I'm just going to wait until you give me the thumbs up for the recording. Thank you, members of the public, for coming back in. Just while we were behind closed doors, Council resolved, firstly, agenda item 10.6.1 was the commenced prosecution proceedings under the Criminal Procedures Act 2004, being lot 887957 Jarrahdale Road, Jarrahdale. The officer's recommendation was passed unanimously, and that is that Council resolves to authorise the prosecution proceedings under Section 2, subsection 1B, subsection 2 of the Criminal Procedure Act 2004 against the occupiers, and their names are listed there, and any companies occupying 957 Jarrahdale Road, Jarrahdale, for unauthorised storage of materials and structures and any further charges as advised by the Shire's appointed lawyers. Agenda item 10.6.2 is also a confidential item, and that pertains to commence prosecution proceedings under the Criminal Procedure Act 2004 for lot 718-510 King Road, Albury. That was carried unanimously, and the resolution was the officer's recommendation. The officer's recommendation was that Council resolves to authorise the prosecution proceedings under Section 20, subsection 1B2 of the Criminal Procedure Act 2004 against landowners' names mentioned and any companies occupying 510 King Road, Albury, for unauthorised development and structures and for any further charges as advised by the Shire's appointed lawyers. We're now going to go to agenda item 10.2, Infrastructure Services Reports. 10.2.1, Award Request for Tender, RFT 17-2024, Carnup Road and Richardson Street roundabouts. There is a motion that is on the screen. I believe Councillor Duggan is happy to move that motion. Is that correct?
Not the one that's written on the screen, thanks.
Oh, it's being amended now.
Perhaps for the benefit of the gallery, Mr. President, Councillor Duggan can advise what her alternative motion is?
There was a tender RFT 17-2024 Carnup Road and Richardson Road roundabout upgrade to stabilised pavements of Australia. To the value of $3,999,556.49, as contained in confidential attachment 1. And point 2 is to remain as written. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there a councillor who is happy to second the motion? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Did you have a question or are you just happy to second?
No, sorry, just for the purpose of debate.
Thank you. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? I'm opposed. Councillor Duggan, would you like to open debate? And I would again just remind councillors, if they are going to refer to the confidential item, we'll have to close the meeting. I'll just caution people. Yeah, Councillor Duggan, would you like to open debate, please?
I have personally seen the work that was done by WCP and taken photos of it on Nettleton Road. There is questions that I have about other work that's being done by WCP. For that reason, I can't support and I will not support a further tender being offered to them. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Councillor Bishop, would you like to speak or reserve?
I'll reserve, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. I'll speak against the motion, and my points are we do have a tender process. The tender process is robust. The recommendation is for another company as per the officer's recommendation. I would foreshadow, if this motion was to be defeated, that we go back to the officer's recommendation. We've talked tonight about policy and procedures and precedents. This is probably a similar issue where we employ people in the Shire. They are the experts. They do a robust evaluation report, and I can't refer to that in any great detail because it is confidential. Suffice to say, we have people that are experts who are in that area. Notwithstanding the concerns that have been raised by my fellow councillor, I do have those concerns. But at the end of the day, we must have faith in the process. We must have faith in the staff. We must have faith in the process of the evaluation report that was done by the tender team. So I cannot support this motion, and I would foreshadow the officer's recommendation. Is there anyone who would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Duggan, would you like to close, please?
Certainly. Having faith in the process, that's all well and good, except our tender process does not take into account previous works and previous experience. There's nowhere where it's listed in there how they've performed previously. During the week, I've had to continually send emails requesting that information on what these companies have done in the Shire previously, and it took until today to get that information back. I think that gives an idea of how little consideration was given to the tender process, being based on previous work done by the companies in the Shire. So for that reason, I do not support WCP being given the tender, and therefore have looked at the next, which on my studies looks the most appropriate for the cost, and that's stabilised pavements of Australia. So for that reason, I put forward the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. All those in favour of the motion? All those against? Motion is lost 1-6. I'm happy, as foreshadowed, to move the officer's recommendation, which is for WCP Civil. Is there a councillor who's happy to second? Thank you, Councillor Bias. Is anyone opposed? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. I will just make the same comments I made before, and that is there is a process in place. The staff at the Shire have formed the tender committee probably using the wrong term. But the evaluation report has been done. I do hear the concerns by the Deputy President, and whilst I do share those concerns, there is a process that has been done, and we don't want to set a precedent where we take the control, the power, well, not the power, that's the wrong term, we take the process out of the experts' hands, and then we as councillors start determining other companies that aren't in line with the recommendations from the people who are in the Shire that are the experts. Councillor Bice, do you want to speak or reserve? Is there anyone else would like to speak? Or does anyone like to, where am I? Councillor Duggan, would you like to speak against the motion?
Got nothing further to say, thanks.
Okay, anyone else like to speak for the motion? There's no need for me to close. The points are extant. All those in favour of the motion? All those against? Motion is carried 6-1. That brings us to agenda item 11. Agenda item 11 is urgent business. 11.1, contract extension for RFT 052021, road stabilisation and bituminous sealing, RFT 06-2021, profiling and asphalt surfacing, and RFT 072021, in situ concrete footpaths and curbs. Is there a councillor who is happy to move a motion, be it the officer's recommendation or another? I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation. Is there a councillor who's happy to second? Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us on to agenda item 12. Agenda item 12 is elected member questions of which notice has been given. 12.1 is elected member questions of which notice has been given, practical completion certificates in Oakford and Albury even. That has been asked by Councillor Bice, and the officer's response is listed there on page, I was going to say 1 of 1, but that's not right, listed under 12.1 in the agenda. Thank you, Mr. CEO. That brings us to agenda item 13, which is closure. I declare the meeting closed at 9:39 p.m. and thank the members of the public for your patience and attendance tonight, staff and councillors. Again, I would remind any members of the public who would like to approach councillors, please don't do so after the meeting. That goes the same for any members who want to approach staff. In terms of members of the public, please reach out to councillors via their emails or phone numbers, and same with the staff. Please drive safely and have a good evening. Thank you.